Welcome back to Master the Marketplace with Caspian. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Master the Marketplace with Caspian. Today, a special episode. We're going to talk everything unauthorized sellers on multiple marketplaces, Amazon, Walmart, eBay, etc. And we've got today with us Derek Manlepeg, partner at Vantage BP, a firm that specializes in dealing with some of these unauthorized sellers, to talk to us about the problems, solutions, his views on the market. So Derek, welcome to the show. Very excited that you're here.
Awesome. Thank you, Kunal. Very excited to be here.
So Derek, let's just start with you. Let's start with your background. Tell us about your history, your story, and what got you to be partner at Vantage BP.
All right. Well, thank you, Kunal. So appreciate again the time for being on the podcast here today. So Vantage BP. So we started this about 4 years ago, and we originally started the company when I was a product company. We were selling electronic goods, got counterfeited, and nobody could help us at the time. We went to a law firm, asked if they could help us, couldn't help us, and looked for other brand protection companies in the space to help, and neither could they. And we basically automated technology to help us get rid of counterfeit products across e-commerce marketplaces. And once we solved our problem, brands started coming to us for help, and they asked us, and we built the service out of it. And now 4 years later, we're helping some of the world's biggest brands basically tackle this unauthorized reseller problem. And it's been very
fantastic.
Exciting.
And what was your background? Like, tell us a little bit about just yourself, where you grew up, what got you, excited about this space to sell products online first.
Oh yeah. So originally my background's actually in UI design. So I was really big in tech entrepreneurship, building applications, mobile apps, web apps, the whole thing. And then I went into marketing and I got into branding and that whole thing. And I started consulting for a company that was producing electronic cigarettes at the time, and was working with them for about a year and a half. And in that industry, counterfeits were just a massive headache. I mean, literally there was products that were just coming over from China, ending up on eBay, ending up on Amazon, ending up on all these marketplaces. And these brands, and surprisingly, there were smaller brands were getting counterfeited, and they just couldn't compete. They couldn't compete with these fake products, and businesses were dying, and it was really, really sad. And we never even thought that this could happen to us, but it did. We poured a lot of our money, a lot of our time, and 2 years later, our product was just completely wiped out. And then we took it to them. We were like, hey, this is not fair. We have to figure something out here. And so, with my background in technology, we basically automated a process to be able to scan these marketplaces looking for these counterfeits, and then simultaneously file, thousands of reports to get these listings removed. And in doing that, our competitors came to us and they're like, hey, can you help us solve that too? And we did. So we basically eradicated the counterfeit market for e-cigarette commerce. And in doing that, that kind of paved the way for all these other industries now approaching us as well. And now we're helping some of the world's biggest companies, Unilever, Bose, Obey, 511, you name it, we pretty much have it. And it's been a wild ride.
So let's dive a little more into your services, specifically at Vantage BP. Maybe tell us a little more about the firm. How do you work with brands? What do you offer? And how do you help solve this unauthorized seller problem?
Absolutely. So Vantage BP is an online brand protection technology. So essentially what we do is we identify and enforce unauthorized resellers across about 168 different e-commerce marketplaces. So that's a lot. We cover all national versions of Amazon, all national versions of eBay, Alibaba, DHgate, Mercado, Libre, you name it, we pretty much have it. And essentially what the technology does is it scans these marketplaces every day looking for new sellers and new listings, right? And typically when a brand comes to us, they say, okay, great, these sellers like Caspian, these other sellers are authorized, put them in a bucket over to the side, but anybody else that's not on our authorized seller list, let's find out who they are and let's go after them. So essentially our technology will scrape the marketplace, look for new sellers, and the moment we find a seller, we basically send out an automated seller verification request straight to the seller's inbox, asking them who they are and where they get these products from. And typically in just doing that, we see a massive reduction in authorized sellers. Typically around 70 to 80% of sellers will just drop off the moment they get a first notice. So for a brand, coming to us with hundreds of resellers, that's a pretty big win right out the gates. And then, past that initial wave of sellers leaving, at that point, we basically help brands find ways to automate the enforcement of case-appropriate infringement takedowns to get those sellers removed. So whether we come at it from a trademark perspective, a copyright perspective, we have a lot of brands that come to us with counterfeit issues. So we have, our service can also include that. But it basically, from scale, from the more part of monitoring to identifying to ultimately enforcing, we help the brand at every stage of that, automate that process
I
and
see.
make it efficient.
So let's talk a little bit about the problem itself. Like, if you had to categorize the unauthorized sellers problem on these different marketplaces,
Mhm.
and again, for a lot of people who are maybe listening or this is not a big deal and they're newer to this space as a whole, how would you categorize? Like, what are the different categories of problems that one could see as a brand online?
Sure. So, I mean, man, there's just problems across the board. So, dealing with sellers really isn't the issue. It's dealing with the sellers that are breaking the policies of the brand, right? Those are the ones with the bad seeds that are ruining it for everybody else. And typically, what tends to happen is you have a couple different layers of that, right? The first layer is that you have these sellers that are buying these products to wholesale from maybe a distributor or something of the sort, and they're supposed to be selling in their brick and mortar retail shop, but what they're doing is they're backdooring that stuff on Amazon and they're listing it way below the brand's pricing policies. Massive issue, right? The moment they do that, then you have major retailers like Target, Ralph's, whatever, they start calling the brand. They're saying, hey, we can't compete. How are we supposed to abide by these pricing policies when you have somebody listing on Amazon for just above wholesale but way below MSRP? We can't compete. And then the brand has a massive issue. And then all the other sellers, they drop their pricing and the whole thing just erodes, right? So pricing policies and maintaining those is a massive issue for brands. And really, it just takes one person to bring the whole thing down for everybody. Second to that, you also have resellers that are going to these chain stores and whatnot, and they're buying stuff at wholesale, they're buying stuff at discounts. How are they getting stuff at discounts? Okay, well, maybe the product's used, maybe it's expired, maybe it's about to expire. And we have a lot of our CPG companies where, if you actually go into the reviews of the listings, you start seeing that these consumers are buying these products like,
Hmm.
beef jerky or whatever food type products, and they're opening it up and boom, there's mold, or
Hmm.
boom, it was expired, and it's several weeks. And brands just don't know how to compete with this because they have the consumers buy these products on Amazon, they open them up, find that they're materially different, and then the consumers try to return it to the brand, and the brand's like, "Well, you didn't buy it from us." But the
Right.
consumer doesn't know that, right? The consumer thinks that if they buy it on Amazon, it's coming from a legitimate source, and if the product is bad, it's the brand's problem, right? They don't realize that they're buying it from somebody, and that somebody might have actually shipped that product from a garage and didn't even store it properly. So massive headaches, right? You have pricing problems. You have these unauthorized resellers that aren't selling the good products, and then obviously some companies too are buying counterfeit goods which are also circulating in this market. So it's just a massive headache for brands across the board.
Wow, wow, that's crazy. And has,
Yeah.
just over the line, you've been in this business 4 years. Has this problem become worse
Yeah.
over time? Has it improved? And the maybe a point related to this is, there was an article recently on, 75% of new sellers, I think it was on Amazon, are from China. And I think it was a Marketplace Pulse
Sure.
article. How are you seeing this influx of
Sure.
sellers from China? Are they contributing to the problem? Are they legit players? Like, what's your view on just, the improvement or not over time?
Yeah. That's a great question, Kunal. It varies by industry, but across the board, I'd say we are seeing a massive rise in unauthorized resellers, just period, right? And it's not always counterfeit goods. Actually, our business in the beginning was predicated on just removing counterfeits, but we have now evolved to offer a great market solution because now we have brands coming to us and say, hey,
Mm.
we don't have fake products. We just have stuff that we don't want on the marketplace because they're representing us in a horrible way. And that seems to be the bigger problem in the industry now is just all of these sellers are just out of control. I mean, that's really what it is. And yeah, I mean, we're still seeing stuff come from China, and we have a couple of brands that are just like, I mean, man, we have beauty brands where the products are coming in and there's like lead in the pallets, and women are buying these products on Amazon, they're putting it on their face, they're breaking out in rashes. It's very, very scary, Kanal. We're even seeing counterfeit pet dog food. Also incredibly scary. Pets are dying.
Wow.
It's just so sad. And brands just don't know how to react. They're hiring law firms, they're hiring, they're bringing in general counsels, they're trying to sue Amazon. I mean, it's impossible. It's like really, really hard to sue Amazon. So they just don't really know what to do. And that's why, utilizing a service like us, we can help automate the process of going after these resellers at scale, right? Which is unimaginable before. Typically, you would use, a law firm, and they would file, C&Ds and that whole thing, but that could range about $300 to $500 per seller per letter. And mind you, these bigger brands have thousands of resellers. It's just not scalable. And obviously there is a place where you need to bring an attorney in house to handle certain issues. But if you can automate 95% of it, that's the best way to come at this issue, right? And that's why a lot of brands use us for the 95%. and they leave, they use that 5% and they go after, law firms such as Voorhees or a KJK, which are really, really good
Right.
in the space.
No, that's a great point. And yeah, I also did not, until you spoke right now, I did not realize the seriousness of the issue around, pets dying or maybe just rashes on your face, etc. I mean, I can imagine how difficult it could be. And, imagine the brand having to deal with some of this when it's not even their fault. So, wow.
That's right. No, and they're held liable, which
Right,
is really
right,
unfortunate.
exactly. So
So
what's your view on how much marketplaces play a role in this problem? Like, and should they be liable for solving some of these issues? And a good example that comes to my mind is,
yeah,
the Target marketplace or Target Plus specifically. They take a more curated approach. They only let in a few sellers that they have handpicked. They
sure.
decide on the product SKUs that need to go on there. They know their audience too well. Versus Amazon is kind of open for all. Anyone can sell anything. What's your view on where should the control be?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So Target Plus is something that's pretty interesting. A lot of our brands have started requesting us to start scanning Target to make sure that products aren't ending up there. But I'm actually I'm happy what Target's doing. They're not releasing the
Mhm.
floodgates like Walmart.com did. Walmart's just like, okay, we want to compete with Amazon, so let anybody come on the platform, and boom, it became a nightmare, right? With Target, I believe Marketplace also just released something saying they had about
Correct.
109 merchants and about
Right.
160,000 products over the course of a year. That's great, right? They're keeping it to a very limited scope. I believe to a certain extent they are also vetting the sellers, finding out, okay, are these products legitimate? Are they coming from legitimate sources? So they're taking cautions to do it. I don't know if Target is trying to compete against Amazon or Walmart. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to build a strategy for new brands to come on and test their products to see if they fit in Target as a whole. I think that's kind of more their angle. But with Amazon, Walmart, and eBay, and Mercado Libre, they're just opening up the floodgates, right? They just want as many resellers as possible, as many products as possible, and then just go, right? Let's just see what happens. So with those marketplaces, yeah, it's a challenge, right? I mean, they're just kind of letting everybody come through, and they offer some policing tools for the brands, but I mean, typically they make it really difficult, they make it really hard, and it's impossible to do. So they're trying to pretend that hey, like they're doing something for the industry to make it better, but in actuality, they're just making it more complicated, and that's the big challenge that I think brands face on these open
Yeah,
reselling
you make a good
platforms.
point. It, depends on the strategy too. For example, Amazon strategy is all about selection and they want to widen that selection and that's going to come through more sellers on the platform. And, versus Target, as you rightly said, is, maybe it's a test bed for something that needs to go into their stores. And, that's the approach that they're taking.
Right.
So yeah, that makes sense. And are you seeing, to the point of just marketplaces, are you seeing international be a bigger problem relative to the US? And how do you sort of enforce some of the
Mhm.
services that you offer internationally when maybe there's less legal protection? And I don't know the market too well. Maybe you can educate me here.
No, I mean, you bring up a great point. I think, everybody right now is focused on Amazon US because that's the biggest market. But I mean, Amazon also has 16 other marketplaces all around the world. Amazon Japan, Amazon Mexico, Amazon Canada, UK, Europe has 7 or 8 marketplaces. So, I mean, this is a widespread problem. And I think what's also really interesting is each country has different laws, and it can be incredibly challenging. I mean, Europe has its GDPR information laws. United States has first sale doctrine laws. I mean, every country has different stuff, and for brands to be prepared and be able to enforce certain things, certain places, it doesn't always apply, right? And there's also a lot of legal liabilities that open up when they try to do that kind of stuff. So it's challenging, and I think that's why leveraging a firm like us, using firms in different countries of origin is important because every country is different.
Do you? And does
Definitely.
Vantage BP do a lot of international enforcement as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we cover. I think we cover about 55 different countries right now. And in South America, which is a really growing market for a lot of our brands, Mercado Libre is one of the biggest marketplaces there. Mercado Libre basically has marketplaces in every single South American country, and it's just growing. And again, brands are saying, "Hey, we want to come into the South American market. How can we do it? There's already sellers selling our products, and great. So we have technology that can scan that stuff, enforce those sellers, open up those marketplaces, so brands can come in and
Great,
start to
great.
sell."
So if I'm a brand, Derek, listening right now to this podcast, and I'm thinking like, what can I go right now and do internally to start taking control of the problem? Like, what are some of the tips or tricks you will maybe give them and say, hey, here are the 3 things that you should do? And of course, one of them might be working with a firm
Yeah.
like yours, but what else what can they do internally right now to get control of the problem?
Yeah, so I think the best way that brands can successfully get on Amazon, some of these marketplaces, and getting ahead of it is by working with an experienced e-commerce agency such as Caspian, right? I mean, you guys have such much experience, helping brands list products, helping brands set everything up, opening up those pathways, setting up relationships with distributors, and those are brands need. I think a lot of brands are trying to test the waters. They're saying, hey, we want to get rid of these unauthorized sellers, but we don't really know how to sell ourselves, and they need to leverage agencies to help them do that. It's important. So I recommend utilizing agencies such as yourselves, utilizing a firm such as us to be able to scan these stuff and enforce these unauthorized resellers, and then also registering intellectual property. A lot of these brands don't have IP when they come to us. They don't have their trademarks, they don't have their copyrights, they don't have their patents in place. So building a legal foundation is important to kind of setting the paveway for have successful brand in the future.
Right.
100%.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, I've always said that, you know, in a world that we live in right now around e-commerce and where it's going, digitally native brands, the future of commerce, in my opinion, is omni-channel, both on the distribution channel side as well as on the supply chain side. And the way to be able to effectively run a business on this new age platform of sorts is through the power of technology and tech-enabled services that like Caspian provides, that you provide. And we've invested a lot of capital into building the right infrastructure to be able to manage brands online, but also to catch these unauthorized sellers, take them down, etc. And so trying to invest in that in-house is just a huge investment. Instead, there are multiple players out there that one could leverage to effectively continue to manage these channels appropriately. Right. So let's,
Right.
speaking of like my little view here on omni-channel, what's your view on the future of e-commerce? Where do you see it going? There's this debate that I'm part of multiple times, which is, look, COVID gave everyone a surge here and it's just going to go back to normal. Although the penetration of online retail was happening across retail, as a whole, but, that might slow down. What are your thoughts on like, is this demand surge that we saw last year going to continue? What's your view on the growth of e-commerce?
That's a great question, Kunal. I don't believe it's going to slow down. I think it's only going to continue to get bigger. I mean, I think we have about a little over 120 brands, various industries, and we're seeing across the board these brands are closing their retail shops and they're moving everything online. That's what it is. I mean, the adoption and what happened with COVID and people starting to use Amazon for everything, every purchase, it's happening and it's prevalent. And I think brands are trying to adapt. And I think what's also interesting too is you have a lot of these new brands that are coming on board and they're skipping the distributors, they're skipping the retail shops, they're going straight to Amazon. I mean, digital brands it's just here, and Dollar Shave Club, Drops. I mean, all these companies are just skipping the middleman. They're going straight to the e-commerce marketplaces and they're getting adoption and they're getting sales. And it's incredible what's happening right now. And I don't think it's going to
Yeah, and
slow
it's a
down at
great
all.
way to even test the market, right? I mean, no longer do you need to think about, large inventory purchases and working with a Costco or with a big box retailer out there. Instead, you can quickly launch something on, to Amazon, see if you're, optimize it quickly, see if you're getting some demand, and then, test, iterate, and then, grow from there. I think that's the future of brands. It's going to be digitally native, as you said. Right.
100%.
And we've also seen related to the market, this surge just the last couple of years in brand aggregators who are now acquiring brands and try to roll them up. Maybe similar to the point that you and I were making, there's some operational efficiencies to be gained, scale to be gained when you manage a portfolio as opposed to trying to manage each brand. What's your view on that market? I would love to get your thoughts on just that developing market on this brand aggregation that's been happening out there. Lots of capital getting poured in.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of our biggest umbrella companies to work with is Unilever, right? And we've had several brands actually just get acquired by Unilever. So it's happening. I mean, these bigger companies are trying to adapt. I mean, they're seeing these Dollar Shave Clubs coming in, trying to compete with Gillette razors, who's been industry leaders, and they just skip right around them. And guess what? They have to acquire them. They have to either acquire them or they have to compete. And right now, they're just buying. And so a lot of these big companies, Nestle, Mars Company, Caleris. I mean, they're just buying companies left and right, and it makes
And are you
sense.
seeing that happen with some of these large companies? Are they adapting internally? Like, for example, when I was at Amazon, I used to work with a number of different brands out there. And when I would work with them, you would have one buying manager managing the Amazon channel, another buying manager managing the Walmart channel, someone else managing the Costco relationship and someone else managing the Nordstrom relationship, and no one was talking to each other. They all had their P&L goals, and it was very inefficient
Sure.
across the board. And I would keep advising them, saying, "Hey, maybe you should be thinking about collaborating across a single P&L and being able to shift inventory across these different channels and manage it more holistically."
Right.
And obviously, I got a lot of pushback on stuff like that. But what's your view? Do you think that brand or some of these larger companies are adapting to a new way of operating in this new world?
They're trying. Definitely trying. I mean, when they acquire these new companies, they're questioning it, right? It's a different process, and right now, typically, it's super scattered. I mean, the hierarchies are crazy. They have so many steps to be able to do something that it just makes it incredibly inefficient for them to move. And you have these fast companies that are just coming on board. They're doing all these radical things. They're hiring agencies to help them sell, and they're just more nimble and they're faster, and their revenue is just blowing out of control. So I think these bigger umbrella companies, they're trying to adapt, but they're doing it by acquiring these companies, seeing how they work in an isolated instance, and then they're trying to expand the processes that they're doing really well into some of their other companies. And it's kind of a slower rollout, but they are trying. Right, we're seeing that with Unilever, we're seeing that with Mars, we're seeing that with Nestle. They're hiring agencies in limited scopes to see how one brand succeeds, and if that works, then they're applying across all their brands. But they're doing it in a slow, nimble way, which makes sense, right? We're talking about billions of dollars on the line, so they don't want to just radically change something tomorrow. But it does make sense that hey, they have it's a new world that we live in, and they need to adapt. Otherwise, they're just not going to succeed.
Right, right. No, that makes sense. One of the things that we've been dealing with lately in a positive way is we're getting a lot of international brands that are selling locally pretty well in their countries, and then are coming to Caspian and saying, "Look, we want you to be our distribution channel in the U.S. market and take our brands, take our international brands to the U.S." And what are some of the
Mm-hmm.
things that that they should be thinking about? The other sort of problem, which is getting international sellers here into the U.S. and but wanting to do
Mm-hmm.
it in a more legitimate manner. Like, what are the things that they should be thinking about, like for some of these international sellers who want to come to the US now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we're working with a pretty big umbrella company based out of
Mhm.
India right now. They have a massive market share in cookware products, and they're doing really well. They can produce the products for really cheap, but they're really high quality products. And they're saying, "Hey, look, like we've dominated Amazon India, we're dominating, Amazon Asia, and now we want to come to the U.S. It's a wider market. How do we get in here?" And it's a challenge, right? I mean, when you're moving that much product into the United States, you need to have fulfillment companies. You need to have an agency that can help you fulfill. You need to be able to translate everything into English. I mean, those are all challenges that these international brands face, but they see the opportunity here is insane. And I think again, if an international company comes to the United States, they need to leverage an agency such as Caspian, experienced people in the space that know how to get them into the U.S. market. Otherwise, they're just not to succeed. I mean, that's it.
Great, great. Yeah, I mean that to my earlier point is taking advantage of some of the players who have been there and done that here in the US and provide the right services and platforms is the right way to go. And then,
Mhm.
final question, Derek, before we kind of wrap up here, I wanted to get your views on the use of technology as it relates to the future of brands online. I mean, I have my perspective, and I'll certainly give you that. But love to get your view on how technology is going to play a big role or not in the growth of some of the
Mhm.
digitally native brands on these different marketplaces, and maybe even direct to consumer through their own stores, etc. Just online. What are your views on technology's contribution?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, look, there's many problems that are opening up with brands selling on e-commerce. I mean, fulfilling things at scale, managing customer reviews, listing things the proper way, running ads the proper way, dealing with unauthorized resellers at scale. I mean, these things are massive issues that trying to do manually is just not going to work, period. And it's going to be incredibly expensive. And a lot of these companies are kind of resorting to, instead of building in-house teams to manage all these functions, they're leveraging third-party technology companies to do it because they can do it for a tenth of the cost, they can do it 10x the speed, and that's just what's happening, right? So we're moving into an online world. You're going to need to use online services to be able to match that efficiently, and that's again leveraging an agency, utilizing an automated law firm service. I mean, you have to use these technology providers to be able to compete in the space. Otherwise, you just won't. And that's the world that we're entering, and it's very exciting. It's very new, but there's a lot of opportunity, and I think that's what makes it
Yeah,
great.
no, I'm with you completely. I think the future of digitally native brands or just brands trying to sell on these various online channels, if you can't do it using a backbone of technology infrastructure that is intelligent, that utilizes data, insights, automation to help you be more effective and do it at scale, I think you're going to be behind the curve. And as
Right.
especially as costs continue to increase, advertisement costs on some of these platforms, maybe their freight increases, storage costs are increasing globally. And as you see some of those costs increase, the only way to counteract some of that is to manage your operations through a more efficient manner without throwing people at the problem for every little thing. So, using
That's
technology,
right.
I believe, is going to be a core piece of the puzzle. So great. Derek, how can brands get in touch with you? How should they, if they want to use your services, what's the best way for them to get in touch with your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously visiting us by coming to our website, www.vantageop.com is important. Definitely make note to reference Caspian brought you there. We have an amazing relationship with Caspian, a little over a year and a half now, getting on to 2 years. And if brands come to us and they work with Caspian, they also get an agency level discount, which is awesome. So definitely make sure to mention that. And yeah, Kunal, thank you for your time today. This was
Oh, I
great.
appreciate you, Derek, on the show. Your insights and thoughts have been extremely valuable, and I'm sure a lot of brands listening would gain a lot out of it. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights, and everyone here on the show. We will see you very soon on another episode of Master the Marketplace. Thank you for joining us today.
Through conversations with experts in online retail, with years of marketing, compliance, and inventory management experience, we seek to empower our listeners to master the marketplace. Thanks for listening. We hope to see you next time on Master the Marketplace with Caspian.